Garbage like you has no right to lay a finger on this dress. Veronica Langford's voice cracked through the ballroom's golden air like a whip. Heads pivoted toward the central display. An antique, climate-controlled case holding a diamond-studded couture gown destined for the auction block. Under the chandeliers, the gown threw starbursts of light. The MC had just finished calling it a heritage piece. Minutes earlier, Nia Brooks was doing exactly what she'd been hired to do: serve champagne, clear empty flutes, and keep hands off the exhibits. When Veronica, Mercury sleek in a silver gown, leaned across the velvet stanchions with her cocktail, Nia stepped in with a professional, unruffled smile. "Excuse me, ma'am," Nia said evenly. "Please don't touch the display. It remains hotel property until the auction begins." Veronica turned, eyeliner sharp, painted mouth parting in theatrical disbelief. "Did you just tell me not to touch something I donated?" "It's still under custodianship until showtime, ma'am. I'm just following protocol." A few nearby guests glanced over. Color climbed Veronica's cheekbones. Not embarrassment, fury. The idea that a black maid with a name tag and a borrowed smile had corrected her in public lit a fuse. She stepped closer. Her perfume, French, expensive, knife sharp, folded around Nia like a trap. "You people and your rules," she hissed, just loud enough to bruise. "Always pretending you belong where you don't." "I'm protecting the collection, ma'am," Nia replied, steady as a locked door. That simple sentence planted a seed of resentment that sprouted in minutes. As Nia threaded through the crowd with a tray of glasses, Veronica's stilettos clicked behind her like a warning. It happened in a breath. Veronica's manicured foot hooked Nia's heel. Nia pitched forward. The tray went airborne, crystal shattered, champagne burst in a glittering rain, and drenched Veronica's silver dress. A collective gasp rippled the ballroom. "She did it on purpose," Veronica cried, staggering back like a rehearsed victim. "No, ma'am, please, it was an accident. You—" The sound of fabric ripping sliced the silence. Veronica lunged, seized Nia's shoulder, and tore the uniform straight down the seam. The rip sounded like paper splitting under pressure. "Filth like you shouldn't be anywhere near this," Veronica snarled, clutching her soaked gown with one hand while pointing with the other. Phones lifted, murmurs swelled, eyes widened. Nia backed away, breath shallow. "Ma'am, please, I didn't—" "Don't you dare talk to me," Veronica shrieked. "You humiliated me. You shoved me. You ruined my dress." And then Nia saw him. Ethan Langford, Veronica's husband, shouldered through the crowd, tall, broad-shouldered, gray at the beard, the kind of presence that quieted rooms. He took in the tableau, his wife clutching her chest, dress soaked, the maid with a torn uniform. "Veronica, what happened?" he demanded. "She attacked me," Veronica said, voice trembling at the edges. "She told me I had no right to touch my own donation, then she shoved me." "That's not true," Nia blurted. "Sir, she tripped me." "Enough!" Ethan's voice cracked like thunder. "How dare you raise your voice to her after what you've done?" The sting of injustice burned worse than the ripped seam. "Please, sir, I didn't—" "She hooked my—" "I was only—" Ethan wasn't listening. Not yet. His hand settled protectively on Veronica's back as she pretended to steady herself, lashes fluttering like a wounded actress on cue. "Security," he snapped. "Escort this woman out. We'll handle it later." Two uniformed guards moved in. Nia's mouth went dry. "Sir, please, I didn't hurt anyone." "Out," Ethan repeated final. The warmth from his profile piece photographs was gone. What remained was stone. Veronica leaned into him and murmured just loud enough for the nearest guest to hear, "I told her not to touch me, but she wouldn't listen." The lie slithered across marble, silent, suffocating. Nia wanted to scream, but she knew better. A black woman shouting in a ballroom full of donors was a picture she'd studied in too many case files. The ending was always the same. She swallowed and nodded to the guards. "I'll leave." As they escorted her toward the service hall, she caught one last flash of Veronica's triumphant smirk. The socialite turned in Ethan's arms, whispering, "She frightened me. Darling, she was so aggressive." Aggressive. The word every black woman knew too well. Sharp as glass, dull as habit. Down the service corridor, fluorescent, cold, honest, Naya's hands shook. Adrenaline rattled under her skin. She touched the small recorder sewn into the apron's hidden pocket. She hadn't meant to use it tonight. It was there for note-taking, old grad school habits, but it had been running. Every insult, every accusation, every false tear. 20 minutes ago, she was another worker finishing a shift to cover her brother's hospital bills. Now she was the villain in a billionaire's story. She pressed her back to the wall and closed her eyes. Ethan's bark, "How dare you," echoed, heavy as guilt that didn't belong to her. Heels approached. Lydia Alvarez, senior floor captain, slipped into the hall, eyes sweeping for witnesses before she spoke. "I saw, honey," Lydia said quietly. "I saw exactly what she did." Naya blinked hot tears away. "Then why didn't anyone say anything?" "They don't need truth," Lydia exhaled. "They buy silence." "Not forever," Naya said, voice leveling. She slipped the recorder into her purse. The red light kept blinking. Back in the ballroom, Veronica fanned herself while Ethan comforted, sympathy pooling in a practiced circle around them. Guests murmured agreement. The performance was flawless. Fragile, dignified, wronged. Only Ethan's eyes betrayed unease. They kept tracking the corridor where Naya had disappeared, as if something inside him refused to settle. He built empires by recognizing patterns. This one didn't fit, and patterns that don't fit demand inspection. He moved, past clusters of attendees, past the quartet pretending nothing had happened, into the sterile shine of the service wing. Turning a corner, he caught Lydia's voice. "She tripped you. You never touched her. You never raised a hand." Naya looked up, their gazes locked, no longer adversarial, no longer unequal. "Ms. Brooks," Ethan said, formal as a deposition, "I need to speak with you." "She's done nothing wrong," Lydia cut in. "I believe you," he said, surprising them both. Naya arched a brow. "Is that why you threw me out in front of 200 people without a single question?" He winced. "You're right. I reacted poorly." "Your wife is a better actress than you give her credit for," Naya said, flat. He hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "So what now?" Naya asked. "Am I supposed to thank you for reconsidering?" "No," he swallowed. "You don't owe me anything. But do you have anything that proves what happened?" Naya considered. Her hand slipped into her bag, and for a heartbeat he thought she might hand him something. Instead, she showed him the tiny recorder, its red light steady. "I always record," she said. "Fieldwork habit. You'd be amazed what people say when they think you're invisible." Ethan stared at the blinking truth, the version of the night that could unravel years of manufactured grace. "I'd like to hear it," he said. "Not here," Naya answered. "Text me tomorrow. I'll decide if you want the truth or just to cage it." She passed him a card. "Takanarayim." Naya changed in the staff locker room, stitching the torn shoulder shut with the emergency kit she kept in her tote, a new habit born of old surprises. On the late bus home, city lights smeared into gold lines. Her phone buzzed. "You okay?" from Marcus, her kid brother. She snapped a photo of the recorder on her kitchen table. "I'm not fragile, I'm loaded." He replied with 3 rocket emojis and 1 knife. She cracked a smile despite the acid in her throat. Across the bay, the Whitmore estate glowed like a ship run aground on a hill. Bianca soaked in a tub, tiled like a jewelry box, crafting replies that could be read aloud on a witness stand and still sound innocent. Her lawyer, Dorian Pike, pinged. "Any recordings?" She typed, "If there are, they're illegal." He answered, "Illegality is bluster. Optics decide first. We'll manage it." Ethan stood on the terrace, tie off, phone dark, conscience loud. He saw again the moment he'd set out like a gavel. Carefulness had built his fortune. Reflex had just dented whatever integrity came with it. At 1:18 a.m., he texted the number on Naya's card. "This is Ethan Langford. I'll meet you at 2 p.m. at Larkin Ledger, Pacific Street." "I'm listening." He stared at "I'm listening" as if the words might judge him, then sent. Naya read it with steam still fogging her bathroom mirror. She typed, "Bring your attention, not your apology." Then she set the recorder to charge, copied the file to an encrypted flash drive, and hid a second copy in the freezer behind a bag of peas, because women like her learned redundancy early. Sleep came brittle. Morning arrived loud. At 8:03 a.m., an email from the Mirabelle pinged, "We're investigating last night's incident. You're on paid administrative leave for 72 hours?" Paid was mercy. Leave was familiar. She forwarded it to Lydia, who responded with a middle finger emoji and, "Kitchen at noon. I've got ears talking in stereo." By noon, a niche business blog teased, "Glitter gowns and a gala gaff." No names, plenty of implication. Naya closed the tab, put on her black coat, and headed to Larkin Ledger with the recorder in her pocket and the flash drive in her bag. The cafe smelled like citrus peel and roasted beans. Ethan sat in the corner, not facing the door like men who expect trouble, facing the wall like a man trying to hear better. "Before we press play," Naya said, placing the recorder between them, "I need to know if you're here to hear this or to calculate the minimum you can admit without your wife burning your life down." "I can't separate the calculation from the hearing," he said, more honest than she expected. "But I can pick which one leads." "Pick. Hearing." She pressed play. The night unspooled with surgical precision, the hiss of the crowd, the click of a heel, the clatter of crystal, the rip that made people gasp for reasons they wouldn't name. Veronica's voice, ice poured over acid. Naya's diplomacy turning into restraint so tight it hummed. When it ended, Ethan sat very still. "Thank you," he said finally, "for recording, for not shouting, for not making it easier for us to dismiss you." "I didn't do it for you," Naya said. "I did it for the me that keeps getting rewritten by rooms like yours." He nodded once. "I want to do this right, not neat." "Right." He slid a folder across the table. A draft apology to the hotel, a note to staff, a statement to the foundation. The language was careful but not cowardly. He was learning. "You used racist conduct," Naya said after reading. "Not misunderstanding, not unfortunate. Keep that." "I will," he said. "And I meant it in the corridor. I want you to audit us. Independently. Unfettered. Send me the scope. I'll sign. I'll need HR archives, exit interviews, pay bands, promotion matrices, demographics by level, complaint logs, and internal comms," she said, counting off on her fingers. "Also, my autonomy in writing the findings." "You'll have it," he said. "And compensation at consultant market rate." "Good. Then I'll give you something better than damage control." She stood. "Structure." A paparazzo's shadow slid past the window. Ethan's jaw flexed. "We should end this here." "We should begin this here," Naya said. "Send the statement within 2 hours, and Ethan?" "Yes?" "Don't center your redemption story in my reality. Just fix the system." He nodded, chastened, and watched her go. Coat black, spine straight, the recorder back in her pocket like a live wire. At 4:06 p.m., the statement went out. It used the words men like Ethan rarely risked: racism, assault, accountability. It named Ms. Naya Brooks and asked the hotel to expunge any disciplinary note from her record. It announced an external culture audit and promised cooperation without caveat. Within 30 minutes, the Mirabelle reversed her leave and apologized. Within 45, a blurry clip of the aftermath, torn seam, glinting puddle, the escort to the corridor, hit social feeds. The comments cut both ways. Naya closed the app and opened a spreadsheet labeled Whitmore Culture Diagnostic. Phase 1. Listening. She built the first day's grid. Assistants, night staff, analysts who never saw the inside of a boardroom, custodial workers who saw everything. She printed a small tent card for the borrowed conference room she'd been given. Listening hour. Your story. Anonymous. Across town, Bianca stared at the statement as if the words might smear if she blinked too slowly. She dialed Dorian Pike. "We respond," she said. "We say it's a gross mischaracterization." "We can try," he said dryly, "but his language is strong. If there's audio—" "There is," Bianca snapped, "and I will end her before she ends me." "Careful," Dorian said. "You're speaking like there's a second recorder in the room." Bianca ended the call. In the mirror opposite her vanity, her beauty looked like armor that didn't fit anymore. At dusk, Ethan stood in his office, city lights winking like a code he couldn't yet read. He reread the statement. He read Naya's scoping email, spare and surgical. He closed his eyes and saw again a torn seam, a red light, a woman who refused to perform survival the way the room demanded. He picked up his pen and signed the audit authorization. Outside, the city inhaled. Inside, an empire held its breath. Naya locked her apartment door, set the recorder in the same square of moonlight it had occupied the night before, and wrote a single sentence on a new page of her notebook. Tomorrow I stop being furniture and start being a mirror. She underlined it once. And in the hush before sleep, the room that had pretended not to see her began, slowly, reluctantly, to look. The statement changed the temperature of the building by a few degrees. Not warmth, not yet, but a hum of attention that made people lift their heads when Naya walked past. The guard at reception handed her a visitor lanyard with both hands as if it were heavier today. Colleen from HR met her at the elevator. Posture straight, smile careful. Conference 7C had a long table, 2 frosted windows, a squeaky chair, and the neutrality of a dentist's waiting room. Naya made it hers in quiet ways. A carafe of water, a bowl of wrapped mints for nerves, a small sign she propped beside her laptop that read, "Listening Hour, Your Story Anonymous." She placed a stack of consent forms to the side, not in front of people. She wanted the words to arrive before the paperwork. Her first appointment arrived early, the way anxious people do. Ellis Monroe, Design Team 28, team. He sat on the edge of the chair like a sprinter with doubts. "I like working here," he began, eyes on his hands. "It's a dream on paper. But there's a code no one names. Golf, pedigree talk, inside jokes about boarding schools. If you don't speak it, promotions treat you like static." "And who speaks the code most fluently?" Naya asked. "Partners, department heads." He swallowed. "People who look like the lobby portraits?" She wrote that phrase exactly. He watched her write it and unclenched a little. By noon, there was a line outside 7C. An assistant named Priya described a director who praised her detail orientation, but always asked her to take notes, never to present. A project manager from operations whispered the new insult they used instead of diversity hire: pipeline candidate. A custodian named James, night shift, 61, told her he had watched the same 3 men get promoted in rotation for a decade, while the women who trained them left inside a year. "You writing this down for a report or for a museum?" he asked, not unkindly. "For a demolition plan," she said. "Then a blueprint." He nodded like he'd been waiting to hear that exact sequence. Mid-afternoon brought an interview that pressed against her restraint. A senior engineer named Douglas Price took the chair as if it owed him comfort and folded his arms. "We don't have a diversity problem," he said. "We hire for merit. Best person wins." "What does best look like?" she asked. "Competent, reliable, culture fit." "And who decides the fit?" Naya said. "Leadership." He shrugged. "Us." She slid a printout across the table. 10 years of promotion data by race and gender. One column was a wall of zeros where black women in leadership should have been. "Merit," she said, and let the silence teach the lesson. He reddened, gathered himself, and stood. "This feels like a witch hunt." "A witch hunt implies the witches aren't real, Mr. Price," she replied. "I'm not hunting anyone. I'm holding up a mirror. People dislike mirrors when they've been standing in soft light." He left without shaking her hand. Outside, a junior analyst, who had overheard only tones, not words, gave Naya a small thumbs up he thought was invisible. It wasn't. Between interviews, her phone pulsed with 2 kinds of messages. Lydia fed her back-of-house intelligence from the hotel. The donors who rolled their eyes, the servers who whispered finally. Marcus sent her a photo of their rent confirmation and wrote, "Paid, thanks, General." She smiled at the rank and texted him a grocery list heavy on vegetables and hope. At 3, Ethan arrived unannounced with a coffee he didn't know how she took, and an expression he wore like a suit he wasn't sure fit. "How's the room treating you?" he asked. "Like a fever breaking," she said. "Hot, uncomfortable, necessary." He took that in. "Legal wants to know how far you need access to go." "Far enough to hurt before it heals," she said. HR archives. Exit interviews, complaint logs, emails around hiring language, leadership performance reviews where culture fit appears like a magic word. "You'll have it," he said, "and I scheduled a town hall. Thursday morning. Microphones open. I'll start. Then I'll stop." "Good," Naya said. "If it breaks you a little, it'll work better." He almost laughed. I think I'm past a little. As he reached the door, he paused. For what it's worth, Bianca has retained outside counsel. There may be noise. She's been making noise, Naya said. I'm collecting signal. When he left, she opened a new file and titled it, Patterns We Pretend Not to See. The cursor blinked like a metronome. She typed until it lost its rhythm. By evening, the story had found a sharper edge online. A gossip site posted a still of Veronica's face mid-sob, a halo of pity around her in the comments. Another account posted a cropped photo of Naya's torn seam and wrote a caption that did not hide what it meant to say. Naya closed both, shut her laptop, and sat with the quiet. Quiet was where conviction checked its spine. On the other side of town, Bianca angled her face toward flattering window light and recorded a story for her followers. She spoke of misunderstanding and humiliation, of being attacked for generosity, of women tearing down women. The words were smooth enough to slip into any ear that preferred silk to truth. Her lawyer's text was a colder thread. We need to consider a proactive narrative if audio surfaces. Suggest emotional distress framing, potential defamation path. She typed back, do it. Then opened her jewelry drawer and stared at the necklace she'd meant to donate next year. For the first time, it looked like evidence. At dawn, Naya took the first bus and beat the sun to the office. She printed a one-page charter and taped it to the inside of the conference room door, where only she could see it. Listen without interruption. Document with precision. Name systems, not scapegoats. Protect the vulnerable. Expect retaliation. She breathed once and unlocked the door. The fifth interview of the day broke the page open. Ruth Ann from Facilities wore red lipstick like armor and orthopedic shoes like memory. 30 years here, she said, settling with a small sigh. I've watched boys step over my mop to go run meetings I trained them for. No one asked my name until last week. Then you did. Her eyes softened. Don't drop this, baby. They're hoping you'll tire. I won't, Naya said. But if I stumble, push. I've been pushing men larger than doors, Ruth said, and smiled. By lunch, Colleen brought a tray of coffees and an apology. I should have said something sooner, she murmured, placing the cups down. It was not a confession so much as a request for permission to be better now. Naya nodded once. Start by surfacing exit interviews for the last 5 years with the phrase, not a fit. Then the ones that mention tone, aggressive, or lacks polish. There will be patterns. Colleen's eyes widened at the specificity. On it, she said, and left with a walk that looked like purpose rediscovered. In a quiet hour mid-afternoon, Ethan practiced in his office. He did not rehearse a performance. He practiced honesty until the words stopped tasting like metal. I failed to look. I protected comfort. I benefited from silence. He circled them, uncircled them, wrote them again. That evening, the Bay Sentinel called. We have a tip that there's audio. Would the company like to comment? PR drafted a reply that said we do not comment on ongoing reviews. Ethan deleted it and wrote, we are not hiding. We will speak in our own voices tomorrow. He sent it before fear could edit him. Night folded around the city. Naya stood at her sink washing the same mug twice because her hands needed movement and her mind needed stillness. Marcus leaned on the doorway, grim and proud. You're trending, he said, like it was a diagnosis. I'm working, she answered. Think he'll do it, Marcus asked. Tell the truth in front of his own men. He already has once, she said. Now he has to do it with the lights on. Morning arrived with the exactness of a clock being wound. The auditorium filled long before 9. People who had never shared a room shared air. Assistants beside architects. Security beside senior counsel. Custodians beside coders. The stage was spare. A lectern, a screen that read, Truth, Transparency, Reckoning. Ethan stepped up first. The room quieted in layers. He didn't clear his throat or smile. He looked at them the way a person looks at a mountain they wish to climb in bad shoes. I am not here to defend our past, he said. I am here to confront it. In rooms like this, I've benefited from careful language and quicker judgments. Last week, I chose reflex over truth. Many of you have watched that reflex make your work smaller. I am sorry, and I will not ask you to accept that apology without change attached. A shift in the room. Not comfort, attention. We have engaged an external auditor, Ms. Nia Brooks, to examine our culture, our hiring, our promotions, our exits. She is not here to save us. She is here to measure us against our own stated values. He stepped aside. Ms. Brooks. Nia walked into the lights with her notebook closed. She did not perform. She stood like a doorframe. This is not a witch hunt, she said. It's a mirror. Mirrors make people angry when they have lived in soft light. Anger is not an argument. Data is. Stories are. We will listen first. Then we will change what listening makes impossible to ignore. She nodded to the floor. Microphones opened. People rose. A black engineer named Terry walked slowly to the mic and planted both hands on it like he'd carried this sentence for 17 years. I trained 3 managers who got promoted over me. My reviews said reliable, thorough, never said leader, but every one of them used my slide deck like a script. He took a breath. I shouldn't have had to wait for a scandal to say that out loud. A white marketing lead followed. I didn't witness racism, she said, voice shaking, but I did witness silence. In 2021, I watched someone belittle an intern for her hair. I told myself it wasn't my place. I regret that more than any project I've ever shipped. A Latina team supervisor spoke next. HR told me my curls were unprofessional. I straightened my identity to keep my paycheck. Laughter in the crowd, soft, painful, not at her, but at themselves. Ruth Ann took the aisle like a runway, red lipstick bright enough to be its own witness. For 30 years, no one asked me how I was, she said, and the room laughed because it recognized itself. Last week, someone did. About damn time. The testimonies came like rain that had been waiting behind a dam. They were not theatrical. They were ordinary and, in their ordinariness, devastating. Midway through, the back doors opened and Veronica entered. Ivory blouse, pearls, sunglasses like a shield. The room drew a breath it did not release. She approached a mic, removed the sunglasses, and set them on the stand like a small surrender. I did harm, she said, voice steady. I told myself intent mattered more than consequence. It doesn't. I thought money insulated me from the need to examine myself. It doesn't. I don't expect forgiveness. I expect accountability. She looked toward Ethan, then away. Then she left by the same door she had used to enter. The room exhaled, not in approval, in recognition that a script had been interrupted. Afterward, backstage, Ethan sat on the edge of a folding chair like a penitent at a makeshift altar. Did it matter, he asked, eyes on the floor. It mattered that they spoke, Nia said. It matters what you do next. Will you stand next to me when I dismantle the parts that made me comfortable? He asked. I'll stand next to the work, Nia said. You have to stand next to yourself. He nodded and let the sentence land. By afternoon, her inbox was a weather system. Department heads wanting to meet, anonymous tips pointing to phrases embedded in performance reviews like weeds, polish, not a fit, tone. An encrypted email from an address she did not recognize contained copies of internal messages from years ago where culture fit arrived like a rubber stamp and an apology for the lack of diversity arrived like a slogan. She read until her eyes blurred, then stood, stretched, and walked the building. She looked at the lobby portraits the way one looks at a story that left out central characters. In the reflection of the glass, she saw the faint outline of herself, and behind her, Ruth Ann's red mouth tilt like a benediction. In his office, Ethan drafted the new Ethics Council charter. He did not name himself chair. He named Lydia. He sent the document to legal with a subject line that read, "Build a spine around this." Near dusk, a message arrived that shifted the ground beneath all their feet. It was short, unsigned, and carried a scan of an old HR cover sheet with a coded case number and a blacked-out name. The subject line said simply, "You missed this." The body said there were settlements. One of them ended a young woman's career before it started. Nia read it twice, then a third time, the way one reads a map discovered behind wallpaper. She forwarded it to Ethan with a single sentence. "If this is real, culture is not our only reckoning." He replied in under a minute. "My office, now." When she arrived, he was standing, not behind his desk, but in the center of the room like a man who had decided chairs were too indulgent for what had to be said. "We find her," he said. "If there's a person we made disappear, We bring her back into the story. No NDAs, no settlements, no spin. Naya felt something in her chest that was not hope exactly, but it was a cousin to it. Then start by unsealing what legal sealed, she said, and give me everything with that case code. He nodded once, a decision already in motion. You'll have it. She turned to go, then paused at the door. Tomorrow will be worse than today, she said. He allowed himself a breath that sounded like a vow. Then let tomorrow come. The photocopied page lay between them like a found bone. Case code HRLX109. Amount redacted, complainant redacted. Outcome resolved per executive instruction. Executive instruction was a phrase that made honest people tired. Naya angled the page toward the lamplight and traced the routing notes with her eyes. Who had clearance to bury something this cleanly, she asked. Before my tenure, Ethan said. My father's board, but the initials on the routing stamp are current. DP for Dorian Pike, and a second set, VL Veronica Langford, Naya said. Of course. He nodded once, the muscle in his jaw jumping. Legal will say there's risk in unsealing anything. I'm saying there's risk in continuing to live with it sealed. Then put it in writing, Naya said. Issue an internal hold on shredding, exporting, or altering any records tied to HRLX119 and adjacent cases. Then convene the ethics council we talked about. I drafted a charter, Ethan said. Lydia chairs. Good, Naya said. We'll need a spine that doesn't care who it pokes. She left his office with the photocopy flattened in a folder and a new file name on her desktop. Ghost Ledger. The cursor blinked. She began to build columns, case code, date, department, initials, settlement flag, outcome language. Patterns love grids. Grids make them visible. By noon, Colleen slipped into 7C with a stack of boxes on a rolling cart and the look of someone choosing courage in real time. Early archives, she said. I had to sign 3 forms and a promise not to breathe. She lowered her voice. The phrase resolved per executive instruction shows up more than it should. More than 0 is too many, Naya said. Thank you. They worked without small talk. Paper made a low thunder on the table. Post-its multiplied like seeds. They found exit interviews that said not a fit and leadership potential questioned in the same paragraph as tone. They found emails where culture fit floated like a superstition and polish covered for pedigree. And in a folder misfiled under facilities, they found it. An NDA template with the amount still blacked, the initials not. Complainant, B. Taylor. Witness, C. Blackwell. Instruction note, per VL and DP Brina Taylor, Colleen whispered. She worked the foundation floor, admin crossover. She left suddenly. I thought she moved out of state for family. Family is what we call it when we don't want to say exile, Naya said. Find me a contact. Any breadcrumb? Colleen bit her lip, thinking. She used a Proton address for the employee discount program after she left. I saw it once when IT asked me to clean a distribution list. I might trace it. Do it, Naya said, quietly. And if someone asks your cleaning list hygiene, it won't even be a lie. At 2, Lydia gathered the Ethics Council for its first meeting in a windowed room that suddenly felt like a court. 7 people sat in a circle without rank markers. A custodian, a senior lawyer from compliance, a junior coder, a project manager from ops, a recruiter, a team lead from marketing, and Lydia at the head only because chairs have heads. Naya stood, not at the front, but beside the glass. You weren't chosen for optics, she said. You were nominated blind by peers who trust you to hear without flinching. Today we vote whether to unseal any NDA tied to harassment, retaliation, or discriminatory practice for internal review. Council will advise, but we will decide. The senior lawyer lifted a hand. I'll say it plain. This invites litigation. It also invites integrity. Ruth Ann, present as the facility's representative, leaned in. Babies cry when you turn on the light, she said. That don't mean the light's wrong. All in favor of unsealing for internal review, Lydia said. 7 hands rose, none shook. Ethan signed the order before Fear could ask for notes. Legal emailed a paragraph of cautions that read like weather alerts. He replied with 3 sentences. Preserve everything. Unseal what the council requests. I'll answer the calls. Naya returned to 7C and found a single email waiting that made her sit down. Subject: I'm tired of being a ghost. From Brenna Taylor, Proton Mail. She read the first line 3 times because some sentences insist on being believed slowly. Naya, I heard you're looking. I was told to forget what I saw. I haven't slept right in 7 years. If you can guarantee I won't be swallowed by your machine again, I'll talk. Naya typed, then deleted, then typed again. Brina, we'll protect you with process, paper, and witnesses. We'll move at your pace. We'll record only with consent. We will not let your story be footnoted. Will you meet me virtually first? Tomorrow, 10 a.m.? Send me a link. The reply came in 1 minute. I'm in a library. I won't speak long. She closed her eyes and let gratitude land without softening the edge of what came next. That evening, Ethan returned home to a living room where the news ran without sound and Bianca rehearsed damage control aloud. She turned when he entered and held up the printed statement like evidence of personal betrayal. You gave her a platform, she said. You used the word racism in a sentence with my name on the other side of the door. I used the word to describe an act, he said. If you recognize yourself in it, ask why. She laughed without humor. How noble and how stupid. You think the board will cradle you through this once settlements surface? You think donors will keep smiling when their wives whisper? We made people small, he said. I did by neglect. You by design. I'm done pretending that's leadership. She stared at him for a long beat, studying the edges of a man she might no longer be able to shape. Then she smiled a smile as thin as ice. I hired Dorian to file, she said. Defamation if necessary, emotional distress, threats to my safety. Are you afraid, Bianca? He asked, genuinely curious. I'm bored, she said. And then she walked away, the click of her heels like punctuation. Morning brought a library backdrop to Naya's screen and a woman in her early 30s with short hair and caution in her eyes. Brina Taylor said, I have 10 minutes before the terminal kicks me. You'll have however long you need, Naya said. And when you run out of minutes, we schedule more. I won't rush your truth. Brina's mouth softened into something almost like relief. Then she began. I was 25, foundation floor admin. I stayed late to print agendas. I walked past a glass office and saw a girl crying. 18, 19 at most. Veronica was telling her to stop making problems. Brina swallowed. I only heard fragments. Keep your mouth shut. You'll ruin everything. I backed out. The next morning I tried to report to HR. 2 days later, compliance said I was confused. Then Dorian called me into a room with glass walls and handed me a check with a non-disclosure so thick I thought it might choke me. I took it. I was scared, and I have put myself to sleep with that sentence every night since. Do you remember the girl's name? Naya asked. Alyssa, Brina said. Alyssa Boyd. She interned for a summer. The foundation's social feed had one photo of her once, standing next to Veronica at a donor brunch, holding a water glass like it might bite. After she vanished, that post disappeared too. Naya's hand tightened on her pen. I'm going to look for her, she said, not to drag her back, to give her the choice of being found. Brina nodded. I want to help. You just did, Naya said. After the call, Naya messaged the nonprofit she trusted most for tracing women erased by systems, Safe Steps. A caseworker named Donica answered within the hour. We'll prioritize, send what you have. We'll need parental contact if possible, last known address, any campus ties. Naya compiled a packet, internship dates, the vanished photo Brina described with an archived URL she pried from a web cache, a staff directory showing Alyssa's email ghosting into deactivation. She hit send and felt the shift that comes when a story stops being only yours to carry. As the day slid toward noon, the building felt like a storm forming. People who had spoken at the town hall walked brighter, those who hadn't listened harder, and some faces, Douglas Price's among them, set like poured concrete. At 1, the Ethics Council convened again. Legal presented a stack of unsealed documents with tabs that looked like confession flags. Lydia distributed them without ceremony. Here's what we do, she said. We read, we map, We redact where necessary to protect victims. We do not redact to protect pride. We call people by their names when they are ready to be named. The counsel nodded. No one asked for a break. By 3, Naya's phone lit with a notification from Safe Steps. Found a trace. Alyssa checked into a Detroit shelter in 2018 under a pseudonym, but used her real birth date for medical. Stayed 3 nights. Left a note with one word. Covenant. Likely a women's sanctuary in West Michigan. We're calling down a list. Naya looked up and met Ethan's gaze through the glass wall as he passed. He stepped in without knocking when he saw her face. We have a lead, she said. He didn't smile. He looked like a man told the person he'd run over might still be breathing. Go, he said. On my card. Take whatever you need. If she doesn't want to see anyone, we let her go. But we give her the choice. She nodded. I'll leave tonight. Colleen intercepted her on the way out with an envelope. You're going to need this, she said. It was a travel per diem form and a handwritten note. Thank you for seeing us. Be safe. Naya stuffed a change of clothes into a carry-on, slid the recorder into its padded case, tucked a paper map in the front pocket because phones die at the worst moments, and kissed Marcus's hair as he feigned nonchalance. Bring her home if she wants to come home, he said. If not, bring back whatever she wants told. On the plane, Naya watched the grid of city lights recede and the black of the country open under the wing like a breath. She closed her eyes and heard Veronica's voice again, and the rip of a seam and the quiet sentence Brina had almost whispered. I took it. I was scared. Shame makes people think they can't join a fight already underway. Naya would not let that lie stand. Detroit met her with a win that rearranged thoughts. Heaven's Hope was a red brick building that smelled like Lysol, coffee, and mercy. A wiry woman named Sherilyn, the director, studied Naya's face the way women study women who have come to ask for pieces of other women's lives. You a reporter? Sherilyn asked. A mirror, Naya said. I'm trying to find a girl someone erased. Sherilyn nodded like she recognized the verb. We keep logs and pencil, she said, tapping a thick book. Our ladies deserve erasers. She flipped to 2018 and traced a finger down columns. Here. Came in at night, used the name Alice B., gave the real birthday to the triage nurse. Wouldn't take our free phone, wouldn't let us call her mother. She asked bus routes and wrote down one word. Covenant. Do you know where that is? Naya asked. Sherilyn did. Out past Grand Rapids. No phones, no internet, peace for some, a place to disappear for others. Naya drove west with the recorder in the glove compartment and the radio off. Pines made dark corridors on either side of the road. The sign for Covenant House of Grace appeared in weathered wood. Shelter. Sanctuary. Silence. A woman in a linen dress answered the door and looked at Naya the way gatekeepers look when they're asked to trade safety for truth. I'm looking for someone who might not want to be found, Naya said. I'm not here to drag her anywhere. I'm here to give her a decision. The woman studied her for a beat that felt like a prayer. She's safe, the woman said at last. But safety isn't always ready for choices. What's her name? Alyssa Boyd. The woman's eyes flickered. She doesn't speak often. She draws. She walks the perimeter like it's a promise to herself. The woman stepped aside. I'll ask if she wants to see you. Minutes in a plain foyer felt like an hour. Naya stood still. The recorder in her bag felt heavy as testimony. The woman returned. She'll see you, she said. She led Naya down a quiet hall to a sunlit room where a young woman sat at a desk with a pencil and a small stack of paper. She looked up. Naya, she said, as if tasting the name she'd seen online. They said you might come. Only if you wanted me to, Naya answered. Do you? Alyssa considered, then nodded. I'm tired of being a rumor. They sat. The first part of the story came out tilted, as trauma does when the straight telling would scorch. Mentorship spun like a sugar web. Late-night calls, invitations dressed as opportunities. The turn when no was received as betrayal. The isolation that followed like administrative weather. The meeting in the glass room, the check, the disappearing. I left the city and I felt my insides stop shouting, Alyssa said quietly. But a different kind of silence grew. The kind that makes your name smaller in your own mouth. Naya kept her hands flat on her knees. I will not ask you to come back. I will ask if you want your story in the room where they tried to erase you. Will they listen? Alyssa asked. They already are, Naya said. Now they need a voice they can't pretend is hypothetical. Alyssa's pencil tapped the desk. I don't want my worst night to be my introduction to the world, she said. I want to be more than what she tried to make me. You are, Naya said. We can tell it your way. We can record a statement on your terms. Or not at all. We can use a pseudonym until you decide you want your name to do the work. Alyssa looked at the window where a bird hopped on a branch with the kind of permission humans are always trying to legislate into existence. She turned back. Record it, she said, but stop if I lift my hand. Naya took out the recorder and set it between them like a candle. She spoke the date and location. She asked the first question like a key that doesn't force the lock. Alyssa answered. When her hand lifted, Naya stopped. When it lowered, they continued. It took an hour to gather 30 minutes of narrative. It was enough to move a mountain a few inches. As Naya stood to go, Alyssa said, Tell the woman in housekeeping with the red lipstick that I think about her. She pressed a small drawing into Naya's hand. A hallway, a mop, a pair of polished shoes stepping around the water like it was beneath them. I will, Naya said. Do you want to see the city again someday? Not as a secret, Alyssa said. When I'm ready. Naya drove back along the dark river of highway and felt the shape of what would come next settle around her like a harness. When she parked in front of her apartment 12 hours later, Marcus was waiting with 2 cups of instant ramen and a look on his face that was 1 part worry, 2 parts awe. Did you find her? He asked. Yes, Naya said. I found a woman who made a room tell the truth about itself by refusing to lie about what it did to her. He grinned. That sounds like you. She laughed once, a short, bright sound that startled her. Then she sent Ethan a single line with an audio file attached. She is alive. She has a voice. We will treat it like the sacred thing it is. Ethan's reply came fast. We convene the council Friday. We do this right. Friday arrived with rain that made the city scrubbed and the sidewalks honest. The ethics council sat again around their table. Lydia placed a small placard at the center. We are not a PR team. We are a spine. Naya pressed play. Alyssa's voice filled the room. It did not tremble. It did not rage. It built. When the recording ended, no one spoke first because they were remembering the discipline of listening. Then Lydia said, We move to action, motions. Unseal every related case, the compliance lawyer said. Notify the board. Offer Alyssa protection, therapy, legal support. Rename the Foundation Scholarship Program after the person whose silence you bought, Ruth Ann added, and smiled like a woman who has waited 30 years to see a good idea have a better name. All in favor, Lydia said. 7 hands rose. None shook. Ethan signed another order. Bianca received a notice to appear for questioning. Dorian drafted a statement that read like smoke and sent it to her with a warning. The wind has changed. Naya printed a copy of Alyssa's drawing and taped it in the corner of a 7C's window where only she could see it. She opened her notebook and wrote a new line under the one she'd underlined days ago. A mirror is only useful if someone agrees to look. Then she stood, rolled her shoulders, and went back to work. Rain made the marble outside Whitmore Group shine like a warning. Inside, the Ethics Council room had been rearranged so it felt less like a meeting and more like a proceeding. 7 chairs and a horseshoe, a single table facing them, 2 pitchers of water, a clock that had been unplugged because the second hand made everyone feel hurried. Lydia called the session to order, her voice carried like a bell. This council is convened to examine allegations of misconduct and retaliation tied to case HR LX 1109 and adjacent incidents. Our purpose is accountability. Our method is clarity. Our promise is not to confuse the two. Ethan sat to one side, not at the table, not among the council, present but not presiding. He wore the expression of someone who had decided to stop protecting his future self from past decisions. Colleen sat behind him with a legal pad and the stillness of a person whose name had appeared in a document she had never expected to be read aloud. Naya stood by the glass wall with a folder under her arm and the steadiness she saved for rooms that tried to shake her. Veronica entered with Dorian. She had chosen beige linen and pearls, the costume of earnest contrition, sunglasses perched in her hair like she had nothing to hide. Dorian carried 3 leather-bound folders and a face that didn't blink. "Ms. Langford," Lydia began, "please take a seat. Mr. Pike, you may advise, but you may not answer in her place." Veronica sat. She put her hands flat on the table, the way media coaches teach, then looked up with an expression that could have been regret if you didn't know what practiced regret looks like. "We will begin with a recording," Lydia said. Naya pressed play. Alyssa's voice filled the room. It was not dramatic. It was precise. Mentorship, then pressure. No, then retaliation. A glass-walled meeting. A check. Disappearance. The kind of narrative corporations pretend only happens in documentaries. When the recording ended, silence held. It wasn't the silence of discomfort. It was the silence of understanding arriving. "Ms. Langford," Lydia said, "did you interact with Ms. Alyssa Boyd during her internship?" Veronica's smile was a perfect small thing. "I interacted with many interns," she said. "We run a competitive program. High touch." "Did you meet with Ms. Boyd after hours without her direct supervisor present?" Lydia asked. Dorian raised a finger. "We cannot speak to particulars that could violate private agreements." "We can," the compliance lawyer on the council said mildly, "when those agreements were obtained under circumstances we are investigating." Veronica looked at Ethan. He kept his eyes on the table. "I mentored her," Veronica said, irritation nicking the edges of her voice. "She was promising. I offered access she could not get elsewhere. Some young women mistake access for pressure when they are unused to high expectations." Naya felt her jaw set and kept her voice even. "Expectations do not isolate people from support structures, Ms. Langford. They do not move conversations into unlogged channels. They do not require silence in exchange for opportunity." Veronica's gaze flicked to Naya, as if seeing her for the first time, not as an inconvenience, but as a wall. "Ms. Taylor's testimony names you," Lydia continued. "An HR document confirms an NDA issued with your initials on the routing note. Did you instruct legal to resolve HR LX 1.9 per executive direction?" Dorian leaned forward. "My client cannot be compelled to speak about internal legal matters. Furthermore," Lydia's palm lifted, "Mr. Pike, we are not a court. We are a body with authority granted by the board to determine internal accountability." "Ms. Langford?" Veronica's mouth hardened. "I acted in the best interest of the Foundation's mission," she said. "We cannot allow rumors to derail philanthropy." "You allowed a person to be erased to keep brunches polite," Ruth Ann said from the council, her red lipstick unflinching. "Call it what it is," Dorian pivoted. "If this is about a maid and a spilled drink at a gala, we've already... This is about a system that chose reputation over the safety of a 19-year-old, Naya said. The spill was only the alarm. The fire's been burning a decade." Ethan spoke then, halting any performance with the timbre of a person done with pretending. "Veronica," he said, "did you authorize that settlement?" Her eyes held his. "Yes," she said finally, "because it was the fastest way to stop damage." "To whom?" Ethan asked. "To the girl you pushed out? Or to the story you told about yourself?" She flinched. Dorian's hand landed lightly on her sleeve, a reminder they had rehearsed other sentences. She did not use them. Lydia wrote a single word on the pad in front of her. "Admitted." Then she looked at Colleen. "Ms. Blackwell, did you witness any part of these events?" Colleen's throat worked. She stood with her legal pad and a life's worth of caution. "I signed a routing sheet as a witness when Ms. Taylor was presented with the NDA," she said. "I believed..." She swallowed. "I told myself it protected the company and would end her pain. It protected the company and multiplied her pain. I'm sorry." She sat, and somewhere in the back row, a person exhaled like a violin string being plucked. "Motion," the compliance lawyer said. "Remove Ms. Langford from all leadership duties and board advisory roles, effective immediately. Refer findings to outside counsel for potential violations. Establish a support package and legal release for Ms. Boyd and any other parties harmed without requiring non-disclosure." "Second," said the marketing lead, All in favor, Lydia asked. 7 hands rose. The vote was recorded by a staffer with a face like stone. Lydia closed the session with a sentence that did not reach for righteousness. Accountability is not an ending, she said. It's the first step in a long walk. The internal announcement went live an hour later. Effective immediately, Veronica Langford is removed from all internal leadership roles and privileges due to verified misconduct and obstruction of internal investigations. The Ethics Council has authorized support and protection for affected parties in the unsealing of relevant records for review. Transparency is not optional. Healing begins with truth. Phones lit across the building and across the city. Some messages said finally. Some said witch hunt. Some said both. Veronica stepped out of the side entrance with Dorian to a thicket of microphones. "Mrs. Langford, any comment on your removal?" a reporter called. "Is it true you paid off multiple employees? Do you deny the grooming allegations?" She lowered her sunglasses. "I made mistakes," she said, "but this is not justice. It's vengeance dressed in virtue." She walked past the questions like they were weather she refused to acknowledge. In his office, Ethan stared at the internal memo until the words blurred. He did not feel triumphant. He felt accurate. He closed his eyes and pictured Alyssa's drawing. A hallway, a mop, a pair of shoes stepping around the wet, as if not getting their souls damp were a moral victory. He opened his eyes and dialed communications. "We're going to do a press conference," he said. "We will not litigate specifics. We will state what we're doing, and we will invite scrutiny. Use the word investigate. Use the word repair. Use Ms. Boyd's name only with her permission." Naya was in 7C when the message from Safe Steps pinged again. "If Ms. Boyd chooses, we can arrange counsel. We can also connect with a trauma-informed media liaison to keep her from being swallowed by the story." Naya typed back, "Yes and thank you," each word a hinge. She looked up as Ruth Ann stepped into the doorway. "You hungry, baby?" Ruth asked, holding a paper bag like a peace offering. "Starving," Naya said, and discovered that, in all the fires she had started on purpose, she had forgotten lunch. Ruth handed her a sandwich and sat on the edge of the table, like a woman who could be furniture, but refused to be. "How you holding up?" Ruth asked. "Like a river after the first logjam gives," Naya said. Loud, fast, determined. Ruth smiled. "Don't let them turn you into a statue for this," she said. "Statues are how they stop listening. Keep moving." "I will," Naya said, and meant it. The next morning, the press room in the lobby was full. Cameras, notebooks, the peculiar hush of people preparing to pounce politely. Ethan stepped up with a sheet of paper he had rewritten 3 times and then thrown away. He spoke without it. "We are not here to sweep," he said. "We are here to scrub. Last week I chose reflex over truth and threw a woman out of a room for doing her job. Her name is Ms. Nia Brooks. She did not shout. She recorded. She made me look. I am grateful." In the course of the review she now leads, we discovered patterns our success allowed us to ignore. We are unsealing cases, supporting those we harmed, and restructuring how we hire, promote, and protect. We are establishing an independent council chaired by Ms. Lydia Alvarez. We will publish findings on a schedule, not when they flatter us. Ask your questions. A reporter in the front row raised a hand. "Are you using this moment to launder the company's image?" she asked. "We are using it to do the work we should have done when it would have cost us less," Ethan said. Another asked, "Will Ms. Boyd speak publicly?" "Only if she chooses," Naya said, stepping to the mic. Her voice was calm. "We are done treating people like props in our own reputational plays." The press conference ended without flourish. Outside, the story ran in headlines that held 2 truths at once. Empire admits rot. Woman refused to be erased. Work did not pause for applause. Naya convened a smaller working group with compliance, HR, and operations to retire 3 phrases from the company lexicon: culture fit, polish, and not a fit. In their place, they wrote behavioral criteria with examples and scoring rubrics that made bias trip its own alarms. Promotions would require panels with at least 2 members outside the reporting chain. Exit interviews would be conducted by a third party and summarized quarterly for the council. Anonymous reporting would live with compliance, not HR. "If you remove every place you used to hide," Lydia said in the meeting, You'll be amazed how fast truth finds a seat. Investors called. Some wanted assurance. Some wanted blood. Janice Holloway, the longest-serving board member, told them the company had discovered its spine and would not be returning it for store credit. A younger board member, a former civil rights attorney, added that lawsuits rarely bankrupt companies. Cowardice does. Bianca recorded a video from her dressing room where the light always forgave. She spoke about intention, about being misunderstood, about generosity. The comments were less tender than they had been a week before. People had heard a different narrative and tasted the difference. That afternoon, Naya received a message she had not expected so soon. From Alyssa Daboida Proton. Subject, ready for a name. Body, I don't want the worst night to be my only introduction, but I want my name to do the work now. Use it. Tell Ruth Ann I'll visit when it rains. Naya pressed her palm to the desk and let the weight of the sentence pass through bone. She walked to ethics with the email printed and handed it to Lydia like a lit candle. Lydia read it, blinked, and smiled in a way that made her look suddenly 25. We renamed the foundation's scholarship today, Lydia said. Motion? Ruth Ann's hand shot up first. Name it for the girl who was asked to be silent and refused. Name it the Alyssa Boyd Fund. Second, said the junior coder. All in favor, Lydia asked. 7 hands rose. Ethan announced it an hour later. The press release was not purple. It did not tell a story about redemption. It stated the fact and the reason. The Alyssa Boyd Fund would support interns and young employees from underrepresented communities with mentorship and legal protection baked into the program's architecture. It would be endowed with real money, not a line item that could be starved when budgets thinned. That evening, the lobby filled again, not with cameras but with employees and community members invited to a listening forum. Folding chairs, a simple mic, a sign that said, "Speak, we are recording, and we will listen." A high school teacher asked about internships for her students. A union rep asked about subcontracted workers and whether the new policies would shield them too. A veteran asked about disability accommodations that had been discussed and never implemented. Naya wrote each ask on a whiteboard and underlined them as commitments, not curiosities. You're going to drown in promises, Marcus texted her later, sending a photo of their kitchen with a pot of rice and a pan of beans like a domestic anchor. I'm going to learn to swim, she replied. At night, she sat at her small table, opened her notebook, and sketched the framework she had carried in her head for years, but had never trusted a company enough to hand over. Quarterly cultural health reports that fed directly to the council. Performance reviews decoupled from golf invitations. An appeals process that did not require an employee to become a martyr to be believed. She drew arrows, wrote verbs, circled the ones that mattered. Listen, measure, publish, repair. A message from an unknown number appeared. You won this round. Be careful what you build. It's easier to destroy than to maintain. Naya typed back without asking who it was. I build with people, not press releases. We maintain together. The phone stayed dark after that. In the days that followed, exits happened. 2 senior leaders resigned rather than have their past emails read into the record. A recruiter quietly asked for a leave of absence and returned 2 weeks later with an apology and a spreadsheet of candidates she had once removed because of assumptions she'd learned to make. The cafeteria began stocking the foods the night shift had asked for years. It was small. It wasn't nothing. On a gray morning, Alyssa arrived at the lobby with a canvas tote and a calm that looked earned. She stood in the doorway a moment, then walked to the desk where Annie, the receptionist with the gift of seeing people, smiled like she'd been waiting to welcome someone coming home from a long trip. Welcome, Annie said simply. Alyssa looked up at the high ceiling, the way light fell in planes, and nodded. Not as a secret, she murmured. Then she took the elevator to the ethics floor and sat with Lydia and Naya in a small room with good acoustics. I don't want to talk about her, Alyssa said of Veronica. I want to talk about me. I like systems. I take notes in margins. I draw hallways because they always lead somewhere. I want a job where my curiosity isn't treated like a threat. Lydia's eyes warmed. Ms. Boyd, you just described ethics work. Alyssa smiled. Maybe I'm finally in the right room. That afternoon, Naya drafted a memo to all staff. Subject: for those who stayed silent. Body: I understand you. Silence isn't always complicity. Sometimes it's exhaustion. But this is a moment when quiet serves the wrong side. Listening is work. Speaking is work. Choose the one you can do today and the other tomorrow. We will still be here. She sent it and stood by the window where the rain had started again. Down on the sidewalk, a woman in a navy uniform stepped out, lifted her face and smiled. Naya knew without seeing the lipstick that it was Ruth Ann. Ethan knocked on the door frame. "May I?" he asked, as if he didn't sign the checks for the lease on this room. "Always," she said. He stepped in with a folder. The board approved the framework. We tie a portion of leadership compensation to cultural health metrics and ethics adherence. If we miss targets, we don't roll them over. We lose them. We publish them. Good, Naya said. Pain is a better teacher than a slide deck. He set the folder down. I wanted to say something unprofessional, he admitted. Thank you. She tilted her head. You think that's unprofessional? In my world, gratitude is risk, he said. It implies debt. I owe you, Ms. Brooks. You owe me nothing, she said. You owe your people everything. He nodded, leaving the thanks in the air, because sometimes words need to be visible to do their work. Later that week, a student paper at a local college ran an editorial titled The Architect. It wasn't about Ethan. It wasn't about Veronica. It was about a woman who refused to be a prop, who brought a recorder to a room where truth had been optional, and who stayed long enough to build something in the mess. The last line read, "We don't need perfect leaders. We need honest mirrors and the courage to stand in front of them." Marcus taped the editorial to their fridge between a grocery list and a bill stamped paid. He made rice and beans again and added a fried egg because victory deserved a yolk. Naya sat at the table with the recorder beside her, powered off. She could still hear voices in its shell. Veronica's hiss, Alyssa's measured breath, Ruth Ann's laughter, Ethan's careful sentences, learning to walk without help. She wrote one more line under the others in her notebook. Justice isn't the end of a chapter, it's a maintenance plan. And when she closed the book, the room felt less like a battlefield and more like a workshop. The kind of place where hands build, sand, measure again, admit the flaw, fix it, and keep going. The first Monday after the hearing smelled like wet stone and coffee, like a city newly washed. In Conference 7C, the cheap chair still squeaked. The mints were still in a thrifted bowl, and the sign still read, "Listening Hour." The difference was the line. It curved down the hall and broke around a corner, not because spectacle attracted it, but because doors were open and people were ready to step through. Naya arrived early with a binder thick enough to stand on. On the spine she'd written, in black marker, "The Framework." She set it on the table and pressed her palm to it for a beat. Ritual, not superstition. Then she began. By mid-morning, she'd moved from taking testimonies to building scaffolds around them. In a workroom off the ethics floor, whiteboards stood shoulder to shoulder like clean snow. Across them, she mapped 4 loops. Listen, measure, publish, repair. Under listen, she listed rotating office hours on every floor, anonymous text inbox audited by compliance, quarterly roundtables with night staff and subcontracted teams. Under measure, bias trigger flags and performance reviews, promotion slates that must include at least 2 underrepresented candidates or pause. Exit interview categories coded for pattern spotting. Under publish, quarterly cultural health dashboards shared with the entire company, not just leadership. Town halls with raw numbers, not smooth stories. Under repair, retroactive pay adjustments, do-over promotions, funded coaching that didn't feel like punishment. The Alyssa Boyd Fund seated with a real endowment instead of a press release. Ethan read the boards with a stillness that, days ago, had been shame. Now it was attention. Will it hold when headlines move on, he asked. That depends, Naya said, uncapping a marker. Not on your statement, on your calendar. If you stop showing up to the unglamorous meetings, this becomes mythology. Then put them on my calendar, he said. All of them. Tie my bonus to attendance. She almost smiled. We already did. He blinked, then laughed, the sound of a man conceding a point he was relieved to lose. Fair. The first pay adjustments hit on Friday. An engineer named Terry found a deposit he didn't expect and a note that didn't congratulate him for surviving. It apologized for the time it had taken to see him. A recruiter returned from leave and presented a list of candidates she'd once filtered out by reflex. She named her reflexes out loud in front of her peers and asked to be measured against better metrics. An assistant who'd lived in the shadow of someone else's presentations stood in front of a room and delivered her own, voice steady not because she was unafraid, but because the room finally preferred signal over noise. Lydia, who wore the chair of the council like a well-used tool belt, signed off on a structural change no one had expected so soon. Ethics would sit outside HR and report directly to the board. Its budget would be firewalled from quarterly whim. Its findings would be published on a schedule set in policy, not in fear. People said the word repair in hallways without rolling their eyes. In 7C, Naya ran the first rubric clinic, an hour where managers brought real performance reviews and translated their favorite euphemisms into observations that could be measured. Not a fit, she said, is a feeling, not a fact. What were the deliverables? What happened? What did you provide or withhold? Someone offered polish. She crossed it out. Replace it with the behavior that made you reach for that word. Did the person miss deadlines, or did you dislike how they pushed back? A hand rose in the back. What about tone? She drew 2 boxes. Tone, she wrote. Then, who owns the room, she said. If the only people allowed to be blunt are already powerful, tone is a leash, not a standard. The room went quiet, not defensive. Learning. At noon, Ruth Ann stopped by with a paper bag that smelled like something good. Collards, she announced. Beans, too. You look like you've been living on peppermint and Resolve. Resolve is low-calorie, Naya said, smiling as she cleared space. As they ate, Ruth nodded toward the whiteboards. Looks like a house, she said. You leaving room for stairs? Stairs. Upward movement, baby. It's not just about stopping the floor from collapsing. It's about building ways folks can climb without asking permission. Naya circled the boards with her marker and drew a fat arrow from entry-level roles to leadership incubators. Then wrote, cross-line sponsorship with public commitments, progression maps that show multiple tracks, not just one narrow ladder, sabbatical and return paths that don't punish caretaking or burnout, paid time to mentor in both directions. Stairs, she said, and ramps. Ruth squeezed her shoulder. Make 'em wide. The town's response unfolded at 2 speeds. Online, the fickle tide. In person, the steady current. A community forum at the downtown library filled the auditorium. A teacher asked how internships would protect her students from being introduced to prestige and then to pain. A union representative for janitorial services insisted subcontracted teams sit under the same protections. Naya said yes before the sentence finished. Lydia wrote it into the policy. Ethan nodded and said, budget follows principle. A veteran asked about accessibility. An autistic coder spoke about sensory overload in open-plan offices. Operations promised quiet rooms with real doors, not phone booths with glass. Alyssa came on a rainy afternoon as promised. She wore a thrifted blazer and held a canvas tote like a shield she was no longer sure she needed. Annie at reception welcomed her by name, with the kind of small ceremony that makes big amends possible. The elevator ride was quiet. When the doors opened, Lydia met her with a smile that looked like relief and pride braided together. Ready, Lydia asked. As I'll ever be, Alyssa said. They sat with Naya in a room lined with acoustic panels that looked like origami. Alyssa placed a folded paper on the table, her drawing of a corridor and a mop and shoes stepping around puddles. Keep it where decisions get made, she said. It's a better mission statement than most of the ones I've read. We're offering you a role, Lydia said, not as a symbol, as staff, ethics analyst. Build our case maps. Find the patterns the rest of us missed. Tell us when we're lying to ourselves, especially when we think we're not. Alyssa smiled without tears. I don't want the worst night to be my only credential, she said, so I'm going to earn this one. You already started, Naya said. She chose a desk near a window and a plant that needed less from the sun than most. She learned the office coffee machine by the end of the day. She found the back stairwell that no one took because it didn't feel prestigious. She took it anyway. At 5, she sent Naya a Slack message with 3 words that felt like a bell. Found a pattern. Bianca's arc bent toward consequence that didn't trend for long, but mattered for a lifetime. The board froze her access. Donors who had once angled for her table stopped returning calls. Dorian, who had promised control, began sending emails that read like warnings. She filmed one more video in the indulgent light of her dressing room and watched the comments split, then tilt, then harden. When Alyssa's first op-ed appeared, measured, unsparing, refusing to name Bianca as headline, but naming the behavior, Bianca threw her phone against the vanity and watched the mirror crack along a line that briefly made her face look doubled. For a week she stayed in bed. For a day she called her mother. For an hour she considered apology. Then she booked a flight and retreated to a rental home with quiet and a treadmill, and the illusion that time alone could make the past less solid. Eventually, she sent a check not to a lawyer, but to the Alyssa Boyd Fund. She didn't sign her name. Some forms of shame mature into something useful. The company's bones changed. The board passed a bylaw that tied 30% of leadership compensation to cultural health metrics audited by a third party. Compliance created a calendar for publishing wins and failures on the same page. Managers attended a training where the first slide read, "You cannot change what you won't measure." The second read, "You won't measure what you're scared to see." The press moved on, as it always does, but not before a profile ran in a business magazine with a headline that refused to choose a hero when the story didn't have one. "A mirror, not a martyr," it read. The photographer asked Naya to stand with her arms folded. She declined. Hands open felt more accurate. The reporter had tried to frame a redemption arc for Ethan. He refused it politely. He said governance, not grace. He said my apology is a budget line. He said the quiet part out loud. If it hurts, that's proof it's real. At home, life did not wait for milestones. Marcus passed a checkup that had been a ghost on Naya's calendar for months. They ate takeout noodles and watched a movie too loud because good news deserves volume. The rent got paid without math gymnastics. The list on the fridge grew, quietly joyful errands and large, improbable plans. Marcus stuck the student editorial titled The Architect above the list and drew a tiny hard hat on the headline. Naya added a little heart, then an asterisk, then the words, "Not a single author build." On a Friday at dusk, the plaza in front of Whitmore Group held a different gathering. Not protesters, not press, not executives polishing remarks. A crowd of employees, community partners, interns, the janitorial crew in Navy uniforms with patches that finally matched company badges because someone had asked for parity, and this time the answer had been yes. A simple stage, string lights, a hand-painted banner that read the Alyssa Boyd Fund. Launch. Lydia spoke briefly. Ethan shorter still. He handed the mic to Alyssa, who did not perform. She looked out at a city that had been unkind and necessary and said, "Thank you for not letting me be a rumor." Then she stepped back, and the students behind her, the first cohort, took the microphone and introduced themselves by the work they dreamed of doing, not by the obstacles they'd been trained to narrate. After, Ruth Ann pressed a plastic container into Naya's hands. "Pound cake," she said. "My mama's recipe. For sugar when the meetings get long and the men get longer." The meetings did get long. There were months when the dashboards looked worse before they looked better, because now the dark corners had light and complaints had addresses. There were resignations framed as opportunities and opportunities framed as lessons. There were days when Naya read a line in a review that felt like Twain had dressed up as Today and walked in with audacity. Those days she took the back stairwell and walked down and then up until her breath returned. There were small wins that tasted like feast. A woman who wore her curls to work and received no emailed policy in reply, an assistant whose redline comments remained intact on a slide that made it to the board, a facilities worker whose ergonomic request was answered with a timeline, and a receipt, not a shrug. There were fallbacks that burned, then taught, then became policy. And there were the quiet, unphotographed moments of maintenance. The Tuesday morning when a manager caught himself writing tone and stopped and wrote the behavior instead. The Thursday afternoon when a recruiter paused a slate, called 2 candidates back, and widened the field. The Monday evening when Annie at reception walked a nervous intern to the elevator and said, "You belong in their calendar, not just their building." The Saturday when the cafeteria stocked caldo de pollo because the night shift asked for something warm that tasted like home. One evening as the sun laid copper across the glass towers, Naya found herself alone in the listening room. She stood before the whiteboard and traced the loops, listen, measure, publish, repair, with her finger, smudging dry erase into faint halos. In the window, she saw her reflection layered over the city, and behind her in the glass, a reflection of another reflection. Alyssa at a desk, head bent over a case map. Lydia laughing, Ruth Ann's red mouth. Ethan in shirt sleeves, reading quietly. Colleen sending an email labeled draft, sincere. She opened her notebook to the page where she had been collecting lines that didn't belong in a report, but belonged somewhere. A private legend for public work. Justice isn't the end of a chapter. It's a maintenance plan. Don't turn mirrors into statues. Build stairs and ramps. Pain is data. Don't waste it. Your apology is a budget line. The room is only honest if the quietest person can speak without a tremor. She added another. Truth doesn't topple the house. It shows you where to add beams. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Soup or noodles? She typed back, both. We've earned indecision. Then she flipped the lights, took the back stairwell, and let the city's evening air do what air does. Carry, cool, remind her that outside the loud rooms, a life is still a life. On a Sunday morning weeks later, the Mirabelle Hotel ballroom hosted a different gala. The gown had been returned to the case, not as a relic of unexamined wealth, but as a piece in a museum loan program Alyssa had helped design, accompanied by a plaque that named the artists who sewed it, the labor that made it glow, the provenance of the stones. The auction raised money not for vague causes, but for paid internships with legal protections, a line item with clauses attached like armor. Naya walked the perimeter once, habit in check. Lydia bumped her shoulder. You going to enjoy one fancy night? Or you going to inventory the fire exits all evening, baby? Can I do both? Naya said. Across the room, Ethan stood with Janice Holloway and a small group of employees holding clipboards. They weren't micromanaging. They were shadowing the logistics crew, learning what it took to make a room look effortless. Bianca wasn't there. Her name didn't need to be. The architecture of afterwards had room for absences, too. The MC's voice rose, then fell. There were speeches. They were short. Alyssa spoke 12 sentences that built a bridge from what hurt to what helped. People clapped like they meant it because tonight the giving didn't feel like absolution. It felt like investment. Before she left, Naya glanced once more at the case. In the glass, she saw herself for a second the way the ballroom used to see her. Service, not self. Then a reflection slipped into frame beside her. Ruth Ann, lipstick bright, shoulders squared. We still here, Ruth said. We still building, Naya answered. Outside, the city breathed fog and light. Naya pulled her coat around her and checked her pocket out of old habit. The recorder was there, scuffed, powered off. She didn't need it every day anymore. Rooms were beginning to record themselves, but she kept it anyway, the way a carpenter keeps a good level within reach long after the walls stand straight. She took the long way home, past the downtown library where the first form had taught her the difference between apology and policy, past the plaza where students had said their names into a microphone with their shoulders back, past the bus stop where a night shift custodian leaned and sipped coffee and met her eye and tipped his cup like a salute. At the corner, she waited for the light with a woman in a navy uniform and orthopedic shoes. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The walk sign flashed and they crossed. Back at the apartment, Marcus had 2 bowls steaming and a playlist loud enough to make the windows hum. He pointed at the fridge where he'd taped a new note under the architect editorial, Maintenance Day, every day. She laughed, picked up a spoon, and told him about the way the light had hit the gown and made it look like what it always should have been. Craft, not crown. Later, in the quiet, she opened her notebook one more time. She drew a small square and wrote inside it in small, neat letters. Afterwards isn't an ending. It's an address. She closed the cover and let the room settle. Somewhere downtown, a janitor locked a door with a click that sounded like punctuation. Somewhere uptown, a policy auto-sent an alert because a manager wrote tone and the system asked for proof. Somewhere in between, a board member forwarded a dashboard to an investor with a frank line at the top. We said we'd do the work. Here is the work. Here is where we failed. Here is where we fixed it. And in a sunlit office with a plan that survived on less than most, Alyssa pinned her drawing to a corkboard and wrote in the margin in pencil. Not a corridor anymore. A hallway with doors. The city slept as much as cities do. The work did not. It didn't need to be urgent to be faithful. It needed to be constant. It needed to be measured. It needed hands. Naya set the recorder in its usual square of moonlight on the table and turned it so the small red lens faced the ceiling, where it could see nothing at all, and, in that nothing, hold a kind of peace. She breathed. She didn't rehearse. She didn't brace. Tomorrow would be maintenance day. So would the next. So would the next. Justice had not turned them into saints. It had turned them into stewards. And that, finally, was enough.